Hi, my name is Zubin and you're watching Leadership in HR. Today we have with us a very interesting person, by the way, by the name of Prriti Narain. She is the Country Director HR with AkzoNobel. But to know more about her, we would like to ask her that question. So let us welcome Prriti. Welcome, Prriti, to our show.
Hi, Zubin.
So Prriti, let us first start off getting to know you a little better. So what about your career, about your life, something that you would like to share with us?
So, Zubin, I am born and brought up in Delhi. I'm an HR professional. I've worked for close to 18 years. And the subjects that really drive me strongly about HR is talent development and talent management. I'm also a mother at home, which has been the most significant learning journey in my own life. And before HR, I used to be a radio jockey.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So what is more interesting, RJ or being in HR?
I think it's a phase in life.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in college, I used to be a radio jockey and I used to enjoy that.
Mm-hmm.
And now as a professional, I enjoy what I do quite a lot.
And does it have any connection? Do you find any correlation, something that you picked up from being an RJ which helps you in your present?
I think being an RJ was an expression of being myself. And like I was telling you before this, I liked being away from the camera. That was something that I enjoyed as a radio jockey. But I think the connection is to understand people and to be able to hit that note where with people where it matters. I think that's for me the most important.
Okay. So let us get into the topic that we're going to discuss today, which is influencing other leaders. So first, what I would like to know is, what are your views on why is that important for an HR professional?
I think influencing, so let's look at what is influencing before the why. So if you look at the universe, it's all about influencing. Being a little philosophical, the planets and the sun are influencing each other with their gravitational pull, and that's why there's a rotation. You look at any machine, for it to work effectively, there has to be an effective influence, which is the impact of one to the other. So that's what influence is. And why is it important is that as the society has evolved, we used to have this authoritarian society where as children we would listen to our parents and we would say whatever they want us to do, we'll do that. In offices we would listen to our supervisors. There were linear organizations. With the evolving time, with availability of social media, with the world just opening up, everybody is influencing everybody else. So your thoughts and decisions will not be influenced only by your parents, by your friends, by what you're reading in the newspapers, what you're seeing in social media, by global influencers. And similarly in workplaces, we are moving increasingly to matrix organizations. In a matrix organization, just because somebody is telling you to do something, you will not. And that's not what organizations want also. I think organizations will only progress if we are able to create an environment where people who have the best ideas or closest to a situation are able to contribute. And that's why the ability to influence comes in extremely strongly.
Yeah.
If you ask me, that's the single largest competency that any individual requires to be successful. And an organization that wants to do well should be able to have that competency strongly developed.
I think that's a pretty strong statement, isn't it, when you're saying influencing being the most important trait.
Yeah.
And I personally agree with you, because I also found that to be something that helped me. So I would also like to ask you about your experience in being able to influence other leaders. So if I find it to be very important, it's because I've been able to do that. So I would love to know a little bit more about your experience in influencing other leaders.
So I think that's a constant. I mean, in our lives, in the times that we operate in, influencing each other is a constant thing. So sometimes leaders are in a position where they are looking at an objective or something that they want to drive, which is very functional or very close to what is relevant to them in their scope of work. And they're right in that. But as an HR leader, for me, how do I ensure that this is, in the longer run, the right thing for the organization? Driving that is, to me, influencing. And how do you influence? It's about creating a shared need.
Yeah.
Firstly, I think trust is very important. If you do not trust each other, then you can say whatever it is, but there'll be a lack of, it'll never get driven the way you would want it to. So the first thing is mutual trust, where you understand each other. So influencing is not just me telling you what to do and you blindly saying, okay, Prriti is saying, so I'll do that.
Yeah.
That's the old school, that's authoritarian, right? Because you would have in some form, put me in an authoritarian position. Influencing is when we both talk, dialogue, agree on a common ground, and there's a lot of mutual trust, and there's a common ground created where we both feel that this is going to be the right result for an organization. That's what influencing is. And for HR, it's a constant, because whatever HR is doing is actually for other functions. If HR is doing something that's just because it's HR and that's it's important to that function, then there's a very deep problem.
So have you ever faced a situation where you had to really think or prepare? It could be strategy, it could be trying to convince someone to take action. Have you faced any such situation where you took some time to plan, to strategize before you could go into that meeting or that discussion to influence someone?
You're asking for my trade secrets.
Yeah, but something you can. Something
So
you
yeah,
I'll
definitely. I think that's our bread and butter. So there have been many instances, but I would like to think of examples maybe very early, a few years back in one of my previous organizations where we were going through a merger. And obviously when you're going through a merger, there are different parts, and the organization that is actually feeling that they're being acquired, there's a lot of resistance there. There's a lot of feeling of distrust, and that is the biggest hindrance in influencing.
Yeah.
So how do you get those people on your side? And I think strategy and all of that is fine, but the first thing is, from your heart, do you want to help people, or do you want to want to win the battle? I think that's where I as a person would always question my intent. The first thing is my own intent. What is it that I'm trying to do? So I was working with an organization, and there was a very clear mandate of doing things in a certain way, as it always happens. And then there was another part of the organization that we had taken over, where there was a lot of insecurity, and there was this big roadblock. There was a big, not a roadblock, there was a big blind between the two parties, and anything that was being said was being viewed with suspicion. So the only strategy I had is to actually understand what the other person, what the other party, group of employees was saying. What is it that they were really fearing? And actually it boils down to some very basic human values of being felt respected, being felt that they would remain relevant in the new organization, and visible signs to be able to display on that. So opening it up for a dialogue, and which meant, while it was not a unionized staff, but it meant having a discussion with a large number of people at once, which I was actually told not to, because it could lead to a situation which could get very, noisy or aggressive. And it did in some parts. But having the courage to do that, and then people realizing that we are open to at least listening to the other part, to see what was bothering them, and then laying it all out on the table. And I think that really helped people open up, share their views. From the part of the organization that I was representing, which spoke about the objectives of what we were trying to achieve. And obviously the intent was to integrate the team, not to disrupt them, and to win over and to gain from the expertise they had. So sharing all of that, and then also letting them know that we all have to realize that no individual is eventually larger than the organization. And I think all professionals recognize that. So eventually it ended up in a lot of bonhomie and good communication. And I think it crashed the change management time significantly. So it was one very tough conversation, but after that it became significantly easier, because we felt that there was trust and we were open to having dialogues.
Okay, great. So I'm going to move into something outside this topic of discussion for a moment, for a minute or so, because we call this a rapid fire round.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you questions really fast. Should not be very difficult for you. Some might be a little tricky, but you don't have time to think.
Okay.
You just need to react.
Yeah.
Are we ready?
Okay, yes, sir.
Okay, let me start with the easier ones, just as warm-up. What's your favorite color?
Yellow.
Why?
My children's school uniform is yellow.
So, what was the naughtiest thing you did in school?
I have thrown chalks at teachers when they were not looking. So,
Okay, all right.
nothing very exciting.
So now you can say that risk-free.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope my children aren't listening.
Okay. So if you were to select 3 countries which you have not visited yet and you want to go to, what would those be?
Oh, wow. I think I would like to go to Kenya.
Okay.
I would like to go to Brazil.
Okay.
And I would also like to go to Canada.
If you were to look for the single most important trait, other than the influencing part, what would you look for in any person joining your organization?
Collaborative skills.
Okay, and how would you judge that? Is it easy to judge that?
It's never easy to judge human beings, but I think like in any evaluation or recruitment process, it's the dialogues, it's the experiences people share, it's reference checks, and it's spending time with each other. You kind of understand that.
I think you've done well. I just had a few questions, but you've answered them very confidently, so well done. All right, so I'll move on to the last segment of our discussion. This is where we would like to get your suggestions on our subject of discussion. So if we are looking at influencing other leaders, and if you are giving suggestions to young professionals who have just joined the HR domain, the HR function, what suggestion would you give them on how they should prepare themselves so that they are able to influence other leaders in the organization?
So I think the first thing is for all of us, whether it's HR or not HR, is to understand that we don't have all the answers. So if I'm trying to influence you and I come from a position where I feel I know everything, you're not going to listen to me.
Right.
Because if I need to influence you on a subject that is of your interest and your, your core domain, first is I need to learn from you and to understand. So first is you don't know it all. So never stop learning in life.
Accept that you don't know all, right?
Yeah,
That's
accept that you
important,
don't know it all, and be humble about it. And there's nothing wrong. Nobody knows everything, and that's I think very, very core. Learn to be a good listener. So listen to respond. So our modern education and all the grooming that we all get, it's very easy to pretend that I'm listening to you with great intent.
Yeah.
But I think most people are already formed the answer after the first sentence has been spoken. So I think listening is very, very key to being able to influence. Sometimes you need to lose a battle to win the war. So in the whole thing of influencing, it's about choosing what you would like to win and what you would not like to, what you would like to leave aside. And that's very important to build that relationship. Yeah.
Okay, great. Prriti, that was a wonderful discussion, short but a lot of learning. And I would really like to thank you for being part of our program.
Thank you, it was a pleasure.
So we were speaking to Prriti, and I hope you've learned a lot from this short conversation we had with her. If you have liked what you've watched, if you've learned something from it, please like and share the video. And until next time, goodbye.